how did your business evolve through the years once you took the leap into entrepreneurship?
For me, I always knew that I wanted to kind of be my own boss, is the best way to put it. The drive that I saw as I worked with other managers, I just was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. I really consider it a white glove service, right? We are here to navigate that process so you get to enjoy the highlights.
What is your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur?
I love being able to create a vision of something and then know the steps and see the steps as that owner, as that entrepreneur, how to steer that ship.
Okay, I am sitting here with one of my good friends, Rebecca, with Nested LLC Build, and her brand new dog, puppy.
Yeah.
This is Millie, who I'm going to call Millionaire from now on out. But how are you today?
I'm good.
That's
a good day.
So how long have you been an entrepreneur?
So I started my first company, which was called In the Details, back in about 2000. And so it was just single entrepreneur, me. I had kind of hit the design industry and realized that working in a showroom was probably not for me under someone else's management. So I decided that I was going to take the leap and create my own company and see if I could create a clientele base that would follow. And at the time I was just moving here from New York, which is kind of where I started with a company out there, and have ever since kind of off and on been that entrepreneur.
How long ago was that?
Gosh, so that would have been 26 years ago, I
Wow.
guess now, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere between 1999 and 2000. And then there was a period of time where I did grow into a partnership. And so I kind of went from that individual business owner to having partners. And now since 2016, I'm back again, just full bore sole proprietor for
Okay.
Nested. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how did your business evolve through the years once you took the leap into entrepreneurship?
For me, I always knew that I wanted to kind of be my own boss, is the best way to put it. I think that the drive that I saw as I worked with other managers, I just was like, there's got to be a better way to do this, or maybe a different platform at looking at it. So I kind of morphed through being on my own, kind of in the design industry, and then pairing up with a partnership that was more of this design build concept. And the reason behind it was there was kind of a void in the industry where, you'd have to hire an architect and hire a designer and then hire a general contractor. And for most people, they don't have the time to manage that. So I started to create this idea probably in the mid 2000s, and then was honestly afraid to do it on my own. But I found a partner who, kind of was like, let's do this. Let's try this. And that was from 2013 to about 2016. And for me, during that time, the morphing then continued, right? I decided, if I'm going to be in this industry, there's certain parts of the building I like and certain parts of the building that I don't. And I really didn't like the commercial side of it, the big builds. I really liked staying close to my client, having it very personal. So I kind of decided it was time to leave, and in 2016 created Nested.
Okay.
So.
And you guys then, do you do the construction, the design, and the architecture all in one?
Yeah, so I have a team of 6 of us.
Okay.
I have 2 full-time designers on staff, and they are taking our clients through the conceptual phases of design. So let's say you came to me and you're like, hey, Rebecca, I have a basement I want to remodel, which we've talked about, right?
Yeah.
And I would come out initially as the owner, because I think it's really important that whoever contacts the company gets to meet me. I'd walk the project with you, get a high-level scope, and kind of bunch you back a proposal. And if that number looks good, then you shift over to my girls. And that's kind of the first step in our process. Those girls are going to take that space. They're going to talk to you about, what are we putting into that space, right? Or you want a gym, You want a movie room? You want a pool table space? Oh, you want a corner for a sauna? What is going into that space? And they're drawing up versions to show you and to present, and renderings. So you can be standing in a corner of that room and completely see what it's going to look like. Once that's done, I come back in, and then I'm actually doing what's called a trade walk. So I'll bring all of my subcontractors in, and they will bid very specifically their activities. So let's say it's, the framer first, and then the HVAC guy, and then the plumber. And then after that, there'll be a full presentation of, hey, if you want to do this, this is what this number looks like in every category. If everything's good, and we sign contract, then we shift to the backside of the company, and that's the installation piece. So I am the general contractor. I do all the permitting for the company, and then I have project managers who will go out and complete the project. So they'll manage the subcontractors, make sure that all the design is exactly what you and the designer talked about doing, so you don't have to go outside the company. If I need an architect, I pull an architect in. If I need a structural engineer, I'll pull a structural engineer in. So we keep that team as a tight-knit group of 6 of us.
Wow, that's really nice. And then you've got everything in-house. It's a one-stop shop. You can kind of take care of everything and make the experience for the customer a lot better, a lot seamless. And then it's, one point of contact rather than having to call the architect and call the contractor and call the designer and all that stuff, because I'm sure that can get really difficult trying to get everybody on the same page and still have the idea of the customer in mind to get all of that stuff done. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of success with that.
The thing I kept hearing was, it's just too much time that I'm spending and trying to get everyone to communicate. And as we know, time is money, right? These people are traveling, or they're running a household if they're stay-at-home moms, or shuffling kids around. And to have to work with 4 individuals, if you think about it, if you have an architect, a designer, a structural engineer, and a contractor, getting all of them on the same page, being that what I'm going to call a mediator, no one has time for that. It's almost a full-time job.
Yeah.
So I really consider it a white glove service, right? We are here to navigate that process so you get to enjoy the highlights, right? The getting into the showrooms and looking at, the beautiful appliances. They get to enjoy that top layer, the creative layer, and then all the other details we'll take care of. So it's become pretty valuable that people realize the efficiency of that process.
Yeah, and you started doing this, did you say in 2016? You moved over without your partner and started Nested Design Build?
Yep, it was September of 2016 that I made the break. And that was hard. It was a really hard and scary step to make.
Yeah.
Tell
me about it.
So at that time, I hadn't had my full GC license, so I was like, gosh, if I go to do this, I've got
and that's a general contractor's license.
Yeah, exactly. So I had the years of, design, so I wasn't afraid of that piece. I had years of project management. I had done some project management for about 3 years in the field, so I knew how to do that. But it really was having the legitimacy of a general contractor license behind you. And so that takes qualification. It takes so many years in project management, so many years of building things from ground up. You have to pass a state test called the IRC, the International Residential Code. And it's a book this big, and you have 1 hour to get through, 100 plus questions. So it's kind of like studying for the LSATs is kind of what I remember.
Or securities license or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And then once you pass that, it's kind of like getting your degree, right? And that gives you the opportunity to then officially go to every county. So Denver is one of the biggest ones and one of the hardest, to go ahead and, get your GC license with Denver. And I believe in doing things the right way. Like, I'm here to cross my T's, dot my I's. So I pull permits on my project. I want to make sure inspectors are looking at the jobs. I want to be able to say to the client, hey, I built this to the best of my capability and had other people look at it, right?
Yeah.
So getting that license was the first thing I had to do. I couldn't create the company without it.
Did you get that before you left your partner, or after?
Kind of in the midst.
Okay.
I was working on it as we were doing the transition. And, leaving that partnership was such an experience for me too. A hard one. I mean, it's just a hard thing to do when you've built something with someone and there's feelings behind it. And,
Would you recommend partnerships, or what are your feelings on that?
I think it takes a very special relationship for them to work. I think that in our own entrepreneur group, we have heard multiple times the hardness of partnerships, but we've also seen one that's done really, really well with one of our teammates, and a couple that's worked together in our group. So I don't necessarily look at it as a bad thing. I just think you have to find a partner who carries that same passion and that same vision and shows up the same way, right? Is speaking the same language. Like, are they prideful in their work? Do they have integrity behind it? What's the purpose of why they're doing this? And I think that sometimes it even shifts. You might start that way, and at some point this person might be going here and I was going this way. And that's really what happened. Yeah. I really just started to hone in on, hey, I have a passion for this side, which was remodel, high-end remodel, complicated remodel, whereas their vision was over here with more commercial investor properties, and that just didn't speak to me. I didn't see the client. I didn't know who the client was. I was building for investors. The passion was dissipating. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I don't think I can do this for another 20 years.
Yeah. So you broke off on your own, and was that the right decision for you at the time? And how scary was it in doing that?
It was absolutely the right decision. I mean, I was at the point where I couldn't get up to go to work, and that's not me. Yeah. I was just dreading walking in and looking at another 10-plex that it was the same faucet and over and over again, right? Yeah, and it was the bottom line. That's kind of what it was. It was the bottom line so that a group of investors, could turn a profit. And that's not, that's a piece of what I do, but that's not the passion I have for what I do, Yeah. So it just got to a point where I was like, I can't do this. It's kind of, the passion's dissipating very quickly.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have a more creative hand on everything, and you like doing that side of the business and helping the customers and providing that one-on-one experience and actually caring about your customers and caring about the work that you do. And I know that some of that might get lost if you're doing huge jobs or big commercial jobs where, it's kind of a one-size-fit-all type of deal. So that's really good. And so I know you talked about your passion and everything like that, but what is your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur?
I think it is a little bit about control, for sure. I'm a type A personality, and I love being able to create a vision of something and then know the steps and see the steps as that owner, as that entrepreneur, how to steer that ship is what I call it, right? So I think as an entrepreneur, a lot of us have to have some type of vision, right? We see it, we can see the steps, how to get there. Sometimes we can do it on our own, but other times, especially in my circumstance, I can't do every bucket, right? I knew I had to let certain batons go. Yeah. And that is then the hardest part, right, as an entrepreneur, to find the people that you trust that are aligned with your vision. And I always call it like, I'm the captain of the ship. I see the course. I'm plotting out the map, but I need rowers behind me. Yeah. I can't just do it all on my own. But I love that piece of it. I love looking at it and being like, oh, okay, let's create this. And this is how I'm going to get us there. And now are you all on board to do that too?
Yeah. How do you find those people to, be the rowers? And I love that analogy. Being in the boat, you're steering the ship as the captain. You got the rowers behind you. You've got to delegate as much work as you continue to grow. Mm-hmm. You do lose a little bit of control there, but you got to trust your people. How do you find the right people for the ship?
I think the interview process is a really important one. It took me a couple years to kind of hone in on a specific characteristic or type. for each category, right? My designers have to have certain qualities that are very different than my project manager. And there was a period of time where I was the installation manager for the Green Indoors. We had one that went on sabbatical. I got to step into that role, which was the first management role that I had kind of stepped into. And it was a very corporate environment. It was for a large company. And so I got to peek behind that curtain. And that's where I really learned that HR process. Because there is a layer as you grow and get employees that all of a sudden as an entrepreneur, you're like, wow, now I'm wearing an HR manager hat, right?
Yeah.
I'm dealing with reviews. I'm dealing with interviews. I'm dealing with have to let people go. And what does that look like? And how do you back that up, so that at some point you're not in a legal situation? That gave me that opportunity to do that. So I've kind of, through the years, said, okay, well, if I'm looking for a designer, this is the questionnaire I have for them. They have to know very specific things. If I'm looking for a project manager, how do you deal with a disgruntled subcontractor? If you have a situation on a job site that's an unforeseen, how are you approaching the client? All those little things to be like, okay, I see how you manage and show up in your job every day.
Yeah.
So really creating good questionnaires for interviews. And then I think having touch points at least twice a year with that employee is really important. And I know you and I have talked about that.
Yeah. And so would those be the reviews, or would those...
Yeah. So,
explain your touch points.
So I think it's really important that an employee also gets to review themselves. I could sit there, do the review, sit down like this, go through the review with them. They're listening to me talk the whole time, right? Telling them what I see. But I think when you hear their perspective and they're answering the same question and then also rating themselves on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being you are above and beyond exceeding, you're bringing new things to the table, 1 being you are underperforming, it's not a good situation if you're a 1, right? But to see them self-review, so I do that twice a year, typically in June and then December. So they've got the opportunity to think about it. And then I also bonus twice a year. So if they're hitting those markers, they're understanding why. And a lot of times you might rate yourself as a 5. I might come and rate you as a 3. And I'm coming in and I'm saying, well, this is why I rated you as a 3. Do you remember this and this and this? And then most of the time they're like, oh yeah, I could have done better at that. Or, gosh, Rebecca, I think I'm more of a 4. I did do this, this, and this, right? So it's a conversation that happens when you're in a review. Me not just telling, but also listening. Yeah. I think it's important.
Do you see your staff improve after you do those meetings? And then it's nice because you can actually, hone in on specifics and talk about certain situations where people can get better, in all aspects of the business, whether it's communication or just showing up on time or working hard or whatever. What have you seen as far as growth in those people? And I think that those are really good attributes of being a good leader, right? Mm-hmm. And being a good manager and being a good boss. So do people normally get a lot better after you have those touch points with them?
I mean, I think for most part, yes. And if they're not, then they know that the next review is probably kind of what I call the first warning, because I go through kind of a warning process if you're not performing. But I think that typically when we walk away from those meetings, there's a list of, hey, I'm going to work on this. And then the question is, how can I support you?
Yeah.
Right? What can I do to provide you as your manager the support? Do I need to send you to a class? Do you need more education in this? Are you overloaded? Aren't you able to focus enough because you're just running ragged? What is it? And then typically we'll walk away with that game plan. It's hard because I had probably 3 years ago now, and that's when you and I actually started our group together.
Yeah.
I was struggling with having to let someone go. And And the tough thing was there were so many categories this person was showing up in, but then there were other really visual categories that they were not. And it was this really tricky dance to finally be like, okay, how do I start to release that employee in a very respectful, documented way, right? So I kind of went back to my management skills and said, okay, well, I'm setting this up as a 6-month thing. You've got to change these things. And then the next time, if it didn't happen, it's documented, right? To the point where I'm like, I'm sorry, you're not learning. This is not, I'm getting more complaints now. I've got to let this go, right? But you know why, and the writing's on the wall, and there should be no question, right? So
I think one of the toughest things for entrepreneurs and business leaders is knowing when to let go of people and how to handle those situations, because I think that there's always a lot of gray area there with whether or not I should let this person go or not, or if they're really benefiting the company or not, or if they fit inside the culture very well or not. And those are tough conversations that you have to have with those people. And I do it too. I go back and forth in different times with different people because it's not always cut and dry. Like, there's always sometimes that that this person needs to be fired because they, did something illegal, or they put somebody at risk, or they, did something wrong, or, insulted a customer, or whatever it might be. But at the same time, there's so many different times that there's this huge gray area where you're trying to get more out of your employees. And it is a give and take, and it is a little bit of a struggle, but I understand exactly what you're saying. And so putting those touch points in there and talking about the reviews and letting them review themselves as well, I think is a really good attribute that you've put into your business. It probably helps you get quality people and hold on to them and keep them around. So that's really good. And then and I know you probably work with a ton of subcontractors too. How do you work with your subs as well? And do you hire them, or does your staff hire them to work with like the contractor and everything?
So our sub base is, kind of that second tier for us is what I call it. So if I'm looking for a new sub, I'll sit down with the owner. I'll talk a little bit about, what type of projects have you been working on, because each, if it's a painter, there can be a commercial painter, right? Which is completely outside of what I need when you've got a family running around and dogs and cats in a house, right? Like, you don't have an empty property where you can just roll through. It's a different type of painter. So I'll ask very specific questions to like, what type of projects are you working on? How many people are on your staff? Can I come and see the last 3 that you did, right? So there is a bit of a vetting process that happens before we bring a subcontractor in. I honestly have been very blessed with amazing subs. I mean, some of them I've worked with for 20 years. They're like family at this point. And we've been through a lot, from 2008 to COVID. And so it's almost like a dance, finding the right partner to be out there in the field with, because I can't do it without them. They're performing the work. I am depending on them and their team every day to fulfill the vision of the designer, right? To have a happy customer. So it is very important that we find the right fit. And, sometimes I'll have, let's just use the example of an electrician. I have 3 that I work with. I think it's always great not to put all your eggs in one bucket. Because, maybe a certain client, won't work well with a certain team. So you have to have that diversification so that if I have a specific client, I'm like, oh, this electrician would be really good handling this household, this situation, what we're doing, those types of things. The other thing I wanted to say is kind of just bouncing back as I was thinking, I think that having a set job description for what someone is doing is really important. Like before anything. And we've even talked about that. So if you're hiring a bartender or I'm hiring a project manager, you have a very detailed, these are your job roles and descriptions of what you should be doing every day, all the time. Right?
And the standards that you will hold them accountable to.
That's right. It's setting up the expectations. So there's no question that if it's a sub coming on my job site, which I have a whole list of expectations, or it's a project manager position, hey, we've talked really clearly about what your job performance is, what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And are you doing that?
Yeah.
Right? Are you playing outside your sandbox? Are you not fulfilling those roles?
Right.
That type of thing. So same thing with our subs.
Yeah.
It's almost that same type of, I'm setting the expectations. This is what I expect from you on my job sites.
Yeah.
You know, and it's team. They're my teammates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's always crucial to build a good team, and I always talk about that all the time. And I think that it is in building your culture, building the right team, and, you know, having the right people in the right spots on the team.
Yeah.
You know, and I like your boat analogy, and I almost look at it, because I'm a football guy, as I look at, you know, like a football analogy, and, you know, who's the quarterback and how are we making everything work and stuff like that, so everything goes smooth and we can actually, you know, get this thing to victory and have success in our business.
Yeah.
And with that said, where have you found the most success in your business and in your industry?
You know, I mean, I think once you hone in on your niche, you can be, it's kind of like you can be great at one thing, you can be good at a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
right? You just have so much energy and so much focus and attention that you can spend in something. So I think once you really hone in on what that specific niche is for you, do your homework. You know, what does that look like in the economy, right? Are there a bunch of those that I'm in competition within a 10-mile radius from me? You know, what happens when the interest rates go up? What happens when COVID hits, you know,
Right.
something unexpected? So I always say, find your niche, hone in on it, right? And then everything should push towards that. And I think once you do that, you can find success within that area very specifically, because all your energy is spent on that one thing, right?
Yeah.
You're not trying to fill a bunch of buckets.
And what would you say is your biggest niche? Would it be like bringing everything together all in one house and being all encompassing? Or would it be some other specialty that you work on?
You know, it's interesting. It's changed throughout the years.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the other thing is that as an entrepreneur, you have to be ready to shift. If something's moving because of an international pandemic, right, you have to be able to shift very quickly and analyze what the repercussions of that shift could be. So during 9/11, there was a shift that people wanted all their family back in the house and really close to home. And that was the first sign I saw. It was a really big shift. So all of a sudden, out the gate, it was kitchen remodel after kitchen remodel after kitchen remodel, because they were like,
everybody was
oh
at
my gosh,
home.
I want my family near me, right? And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I saw another big shift. So all of a sudden, kids were home, not in school. 2 parents were home, and restaurants were closed, right? So and there was a flood of money, right, with all the programs that were out there. So all of a sudden, these little kitchen remodel or, you know, basement remodel jobs jumped to like, oh my gosh, we have great equity in my house. The HELOC loans are super low at 2 to 3%. We're both working from home and we're on top of each other. So it shifted again. The projects became full floor revamps. Let's take this space and the upstairs, let's blow the walls out, and let's redo this, you know, because now we're at home all the time, right? So I think, you know, I think the niche can change, and it has for us. And now we're what I call the 2-headed monster. So it's massive remodel, right? I'm gutting 3 to 4 stories of a house, the whole first floor in a house, but at the same time, I'm adding an addition, or I'm putting a pop-top on, or I'm adding 2 additions and an ADU in the backyard, because they want to rent out and make money. Yeah. So you just have to analyze the market, understand that that vision that you had needs to be malleable, if that's the word you want to use. You've got to be able to kind of morph into those areas and be like, oh, there's a need for this now. Yeah. And we can do this, and we can do this really well.
That's good. And where do you normally find all of your customers and your clients that you work with?
So most, I'd say probably 70-ish%, if we look at the numbers, are based off of referral. You know, 27 years now that I've been doing this referral. So it'll either come, you know, that I'm in my 2nd, 3rd, or 4th project with some clients, or I've actually had it where I'm into the next generation. So their kids, when I walked in the house, they were like 9 and 10. They're now married and buying their first homes. Or I've had a couple clients retire and now they're downsizing or they're building that dream house. So 70% is referral. And then the other 30, I would say, is based off of, Google search. House is a platform for a lot of architects and designers. It's kind of a portfolio-based site. Instagram, so the other 30% is kind of a conglomerate of the media stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that people can access you from your website, or they can give you a call. In those Google searches, they, obviously can find you. And in a career and a business that has a lot of competition with a lot of different builders and a lot of general contractors, I know we talked about your niching and how you can kind of be all encompassing, but how do you deal with competitors and how does that affect how you run your business?
Yeah. So I spent about a year and a half ago some marketing dollars on creating a 7-step video process, which has really put me kind of in a different platform. It's taken me years to hone in on that process. It's very efficient. People enjoy it. It's easy to kind of swim through, so to speak. But it is a concrete 7-step process. And so when I'm walking into this meet and greet, which is my 1 hour of selling, who I am, right? Who I am as an owner, why I entered the industry, and what Nested is, and how we're different. And I talk about that 7-step process. I send them a link to a YouTube page beforehand. They can watch all 7 videos that walks them through each step. Even before I come out, hey, this is what we're going to talk about at the meet and greet. Once you sign our design retainer, this is the next step. So I think that is very different in our industry. There still are a lot of kind of old school contractors, right, who are handing out literature. I consider ourselves a paperless company, and we made that shift when we started. I'm not walking out with brochures. I'm not handing anything but a very small card, and I'm sending all that information digitally beforehand. And then I think the other thing that makes us a little bit different is we're using a CRM, customer relations platform, that is an app. And it's through Builder Trend, which is a company that's kind of created this app. And so I tell my clients and I show them the app and I'm like, listen, you could be in Barcelona for 2 weeks on the beach, hanging out. We're going to be at your house. You can see daily logs and pictures of everything we're doing. You can make your choices on the 3 selections of tile with a click of a finger. You can pay everything. You can see an entire schedule. And that is really appealing to someone.
Yeah,
because
that's really cool.
Most people aren't that tech savvy in this industry. So to say, hey, we're paperless, we've got an app, communication is multiple times per week that you know what's going on, I think really sets us apart.
Yeah. Well, and I think the communication is key inside any business when you're dealing with your employees or the customer. Mm-hmm. And, that CRM that you're talking about really is an added value that you can give to your customers, and I'm sure that that's super nice to work with. Have you seen an uptick in business because of it?
I mean, I would say if anything, it's solidified the next step of the contract signing, right?
Yeah.
They get in with us under a design budget, which is always I call the dating period.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to date a little bit. You're going to have some design time with my designers. You're going to get to go see some sparkly things in the showroom. You're going to see my estimation skills and how detailed we are with the scope of work. We're also cost plus as a company, and that's a little different too. Most people will hide their profit and margins in the number and you don't see it. You'll get one big number at the bottom and that's it. I chose way back when within the details to be cost plus 15%. So I get a bill, it's sent to you, I add 15% on it. And then if I'm making up the rest of the margins, it's, hey, I've got a designer involved, this is her fee through the project. I've got your project manager, this is his fee. There's general liability, this is 3%, right? I have to pay for that every year. So being transparent is also a great way to kind of lock a client in because, general contractors have a super sleazy reputation, right? I mean, you ask anyone,
like the
they're
used car salesman.
Exactly. They're like, oh God, everyone has a story of, oh, I got, screwed over by this general contractor. I mean, I hear it all the time, right? And so to say, hey, we've got a process, we're also transparent, we're super tech savvy, for sure. Once they're in design budget with us, for me to lose a project is probably 3% chance.
Okay.
They've seen it.
Yeah, that's really low.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because they're vested.
Yeah.
And we've performed. We've held our end of the bargain. They've seen it from design to an estimate all along the way.
Yeah. And what percentage of your customers that you meet with that have the initial interview or the dating process with you, or you meet them for the first time and do the walkthrough, will actually go through with the entire process? Because I know that like sales and closing the deal is part of every single business.
Yeah.
And I know that, some kind of get lost along the way, and a lot of times it's hard to get some of those homeowners over the edge because I know that they want to do the basement remodel, or they want to do the kitchen remodel, or they want to, remodel the entire, place. But sometimes that, spending that kind of money and doing those types of things can really deter a lot of your customers. Yeah. So what percentage do you think that you get across the line, and how do you really close those deals and get people to move forward with those?
Well, I think right in the front end, as I'm putting that design budget retainer together, I'm also giving them a budget, right? I'm not like, oh, I don't know what this is going to cost you. So I vet within the first hour, right? I'm saying, hey, if you want to do that basement remodel, this is the range you can expect for that basement remodel. If they come back to me, they're like, oh my gosh, like I didn't expect that at all, right? Which you've gone through it, like you get it, right? It's like, I didn't think it could be that much. And I'm like, well, believe it or not, this is a mid-range number. I'm coming in with a mid-range number. I know you could build this 20% higher, but I also know you could scale back 20%. So where do you need to be, right? That has to be an alignment. If we're not aligned right out the gate, it's an uphill battle the whole time. So that's that first step is, are we aligned with the budget? And if we're not, what do we change so we can get there? Yeah. And it may be that I can't get there. And if I can't, then I don't even start that process with the client. I'm like, I can't do it for that. I'm not that type of team, right? But let's say you do sign and our bid comes in, and let's say it's 10% higher, right? Then it's, why is it 10% higher? Well, I can go back through my numbers and be like, gosh, you chose a exotic countertop that's $150 a square foot. Mrs. Jones, that's not a mid-range price point like I pointed you at. So we can pull that back, right? We can make that a price point 3. And that's where, once again, customer alignment, right? Having that transparency, saying there are ways to scale back, or do you want to come out of pocket 10% more, right? Your choice. If, kind of to circle back, if I have clients fall off, it's typically not because we didn't fill our end of the bargain or we didn't hit the number. More so, the last 5-6 years, it's been financially circumstantial. They were looking at a loss of jobs because of COVID. Yeah. Even this last fall, with everything that's happened, companies are downsizing, right? Everything's become more expensive. The interest rates are still up in the 7s. So it's really more of, oh my gosh, are we at a point, we now know the number, can we do this? Yeah. And I have clients who are like, are you okay if we hold off for 6 months to a year? And I'm like, absolutely, not a problem. We can come back to this. Just know it's going to be more. Like, these numbers don't roll back. Right. They roll forward.
Yeah, things don't normally get cheaper. They're always getting more expensive.
Every year, I tell clients, come January, expect anywhere from a 3 to 8% price increase. So if I don't see you for 2 years, add 16% onto that number that I just gave you, worst case scenario.
Yeah. So in the market that we're in now, with higher interest rates and Trump getting into office and everything that's kind of out of your control, how do you see the market right now from your perspective?
I mean, it's a tough market. It really is. It reminds me a lot of the ramp up to 2008, 2009, what I'm seeing. I had lunch and coffees with a lot of the other owners, my electrician, my painter last week, my structural engineer, my architect, and everyone is feeling it too. So it's not just me, right?
Yeah.
It's everyone in the industry, and so we've all been through it. The group of us have been through it long enough. We know what it means and what it takes to make it through it, and that is being lean. In this industry, you have to be able to grow very quickly, and you have to be able to contract very quickly. So that when it's good, which it was in 2021, 2022, you know, you're building a team up. But then, you know, since last kind of fall, when the election started, you get through the holidays, the first of the year the new president's in, now we've got tariffs happening. It's a snowball, and we're seeing it, and we've seen it.
Yeah, and it probably scares a lot of consumers. And I was going to ask you how you overcome it, and what are some of the ways that you try to avoid those types of situations, because it can be very bleak for everybody.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you can do specifically or anything like that?
I mean, typically during times like this, like I said, I'm rallying my village, you know, of subcontractors and having those discussions of, hey guys, if we want to make it through this, because we've been here before, what that looks like is margins get tighter. We all take a hit, you know, so maybe we're dropping anywhere from 5 to 10% off of our normal pricing. Some of the owners are getting lean, right? So maybe cutting some employees part-time, and they're going back into the field and physically doing the work. So those are the steps that we can make, because I can't control an 8% tariff, right? On tile, right? There's nothing I can do. But I can say, hey, to help out a bit, I'm going to drop my margin a little bit for you, somewhere between 3 to 5%. And just know that I'm doing that because I get it that all of a sudden all these products are now coming in more expensive than they were 3 months ago.
Yeah, and on the flip side, I know that you've done this for so long and you've had some really good successes. Give me a story that's been one of your biggest successes, and I know that you've won a lot of awards and stuff too. Let's talk a little bit about that as well.
So I always had this vision to have a showroom space. You know, starting with Stickley way back in New York, it was a showroom. When I came here, it was the Great Indoors, which was a massive building of a showroom space. And then I jumped into a company called Kitchens by Wedgwood, which was a family-run company out of Louisville. So I lived in showrooms probably for the first 8, 10 years of my career, and really loved the feeling of having a home, having a place that clients could come into, select things. So it was always on my bucket list to have one. And I had contract on desk March 16th of 2020. I had looked an entire year for a space with some great, you know, commercial real estate agents, found a cute spot in Old Town Inglewood, right on the main strip that was already like regentrifying. So I'm like, oh, this is perfect. And my kids come home that night, and the next night I get the email, well, they're not going back to school. And I was like, Friday at 3:00, I had to have that contract signed, and I decided not to do it. I just did not know what COVID was going to do to the industry. Thank God I didn't do it, because it would have bankrupted me. I mean, it would have been a $5,000 payment a month in a showroom that I couldn't put any product in because every factory in the world was shutting down. I couldn't get a permit to do the work because all the cities were closed. So I just let that dream go. And then a year ago now, an opportunity came up through one of our friends in our entrepreneur group who had a space. And it was the right timing, right place. And so, you know, that was probably, I mean, it was just the most amazing feeling to know that that was something I could cross off my list.
Yeah.
To have that showroom space.
Yeah, definitely. So you can bring your customers, your clients, your friends, your acquaintances there to show them everything that you do and be proud of what you offer, what you do, all of those things. And I know that you've won some awards too in the past. Do you want to touch on those a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like last year was kind of, I don't know, like my year, so to speak.
It was a good year.
It was a good year for being recognized. And, you know, being a female in a construction industry is not an easy thing. I mean, I remember showing up here in Colorado, which was very different than New York way back when, in suits and heels on job sites. And everyone around me was in like jeans and cowboy boots. And I was this young 20-something, right, with all these older gentlemen in the field. And I took a lot of heat for a long time. I was tested, I was prodded, kind of, does she know her stuff? But I did have, 3 gentlemen who really took me under their wing. One of them, which helped me start up Nested, John Miller. And I wouldn't have learned without them. I mean, they really were teachers in the field for me. I owe so much to that group. And most of them are retired now. They're in their 70s, kicking it. So last year I was approached by the who's who of America, and won, Female Entrepreneur of the Year with them. And then the Architectural Digest article kind of came out, so that was great to be published. And I think, that just kind of helped open a bunch of doors for me too. And then the last group, it was, I think, like top female president of the year, which was really an honor too. So, it was kind of, I turned around and this was happening, and I turned around and this was happening. And I have a book now for the Who's Who in America, which actually goes in the National Library in DC, that is a little bit of a history of who I am, the award I won, why I do what I do. And then the other one, which probably, it's a small little article, but it was Colorado Builders. They did a whole spread on the charity work that we do as a company, and that I kind of won this award for being one of the most charitable contractors here in Colorado.
Yeah, and what charities do you work with?
So there are 3 that I like to focus on. CYC, as it's known, or Colorado Youth for a Change, and I've been on the board with them for 9 years. They specifically help solve the educational crisis for students in the state of Colorado. So if someone's struggling within a school system and they've had to drop out, or they're just not fitting into that school, this is a charity that will help figure out a way to keep them within the education system. Colorado for a while was like number 3 or 4 for dropouts in the United States, which is crazy when you think about that, right? Yeah. So they've done amazing work, went from a pretty small charity to some big guns. So that's one of them. The Lion Project, run by a gentleman named Zach, they're kind of unique in that they have a board, and every year they choose a charity to promote. So they come with a video-based kind of platform. And this year it's DPS School Systems, trying to get food into backpacks.
Denver Public Schools.
Yeah, so they're really focused on the food crisis that's going on right now. So we have a pretty exciting new project that we're trying to launch, and that is creating kind of mini supermarkets on the school playgrounds for families that are in need per school. Yeah. So seeing if we can help solve that. And then the last one is Safe Harbor Lab. So it's a Labrador rescue, as I sit here with little Miss Millie. She's not a lab, she's a Weimaraner. But we've done, Lab Fest with them, which is setting up tents. We've done charity work, just donations. And then they just bought a property, so I'm actually going to help them build the property, their very first mortar and stone property. So it'll house 7 labs that come in, and then eventually will go to homes throughout the community. So yeah, I stay really active. I mean, I'd say at least once a week I'm somewhere in one of those platforms and kind of helping out.
How do you think that the charity work intermixes with your entrepreneurship journey, and how it helps you become an entrepreneur or be one?
I mean, I think the thing I've realized is that as an owner and as a visionary, I always think of it like this well within me, right? And that well has to be filled somehow, somewhere, right? Because you as an entrepreneur are constantly giving somehow, right? Giving advice, giving instruction. You're just constantly putting yourself out there, and that well can get depleted pretty quick if you're not figuring out how to fuel it. So for me, as I kind of realized, that is what the charities do for me. They help me fill that well, right? They're bringing a different type of accomplishment, of fulfillment, of giving back to community that I've built a company in and really want to be part of this community. I just don't want to be a fly by night. I want something to stand, you know?
Yeah.
And so helping them build within the same community that I'm building in just seems to make sense. And it brings me that fulfillment to continue to fill that well.
Yeah, I think that giving back is a huge piece of business and being an entrepreneur and just, you know, being a good person. And it really can give you extra energy. It really can give you a sense of purpose and let you know that you're doing something good for somebody else.
Yeah.
And I actually just finished Adam Grant's book, which I love, Give and Take, which he talks about, you know, givers really in the long run can be on the bottom side of the spectrum, but they also on the top side of the spectrum, and it helps out, and they end up being more successful because they're giving to their charity, or they're giving to their employees, or they're giving to their customers, or they're giving to their families. But being more of a giver definitely helps out for people in the long run, and can obviously help with the culture and stuff. And I know that you and I met through our entrepreneurship group here in Colorado. It's a group of 7 of us, and it's called Thrive, and it was part of the CTLF, or the Colorado Thought Leaders Forum, which is now changed to Civico.
Yeah.
But it has really helped me in my journey, and getting together and, you know, throwing ideas off of each other and really getting some help from everybody in the group has really helped in my journey. And I know you've been a part of it for a long time. Describe how getting with an entrepreneurship group in your mind helps you just with your business and do better.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a point where, you know, hitting my 27th year, there was a couple of years ago, I was like, gosh, I love to continue to educate. You know, we all are big book readers in this group. But I really felt like I needed a group that was experiencing the same things on a daily basis. Because I have wonderful friend groups, but within them, there weren't very many entrepreneurs. There were a lot of 9-to-5ers. And so as I was struggling with something, I was like, gosh, I could use a sounding board for this. You know, someone who is juggling running a business, running a household, you know, all the buckets, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of started this search of looking for some type of group that would help me continue to grow. And I ran into Robert Ham at the time, who was kind of the, you know, in charge of finding new members. And he approached me with this Thrive group and said, hey, like, this is a group that you're not just focused on the numbers, right, of your business, but understanding that an entrepreneur is made up of all these different categories. And so it's, you know, your friends, and it's your family, and it's how you take care of yourself personally, and then it's your business too. And that really appealed to me, to be like, yeah, this is a balance, right? To do what I do takes a balance in all these areas. So it's been, as we see, we've been accountability partners for over, 6-7 months now, and have, you know, really, I think, helped each other to accomplish goals that we set. So there's accountability to it, right? You have to know that in order to grow, someone, you know, we need accountability, because who else is holding us accountable at this level anymore?
And it's nice to have somebody to be accountable to, right? And it helps you achieve your goals a little bit faster and stay on track, and, you know, talk to somebody on a weekly basis and, you know, catch up and see it from an outsider's perspective. I know that that's probably what helps me out the most, is to see things that I don't see from somebody else's eyes. Because we can get into the mundane part of life and just like have the blinders on, and we're, you know, dealing with struggles, and we're trying to work out problems, and, you know, we can't find solutions. And so it's nice to throw, you know, ideas around and different solutions and stuff like that, because as entrepreneurs, we're really, you know, big problem solvers, and we're constantly dealing with problems. And it's like, it's nice to have somebody to talk to, you know, go over things and just see it from a different perspective. So that's really good. And then I know that you're with another group too that's a little bit more in detail, that talks about the numbers and kind of digs into things. And I'm not part of a group like that, but What do they do and how do they help you out?
Yeah, so I found Portical is the other group with Dirk and Mike Tafoya, Dirk Dykston and Mike Tafoya. And that group, to me, I have a one-on-one coach. So Mike is my coach. We meet once a month. And that's a very different level of accountability. So at that point, we are analyzing the numbers of the business, right?
Yeah.
My CFO and I are getting together. We're creating earned income statement sheets. We're looking at a WIP report, everything.
What is a WIP report?
So a WIP report, kind of, if the best way I could describe it, because you can get in really deep to it, but the kind of high level is, if I were to put a pinpoint today on my company, right? What are my financials? What is out there that I owe? What do I still have to collect? So that, if I were to decide to make an investment tomorrow, what do my exact numbers look like, right? Or if I were, I'm gonna put her down real quick. If I were to decide to close tomorrow, what does that look like, right? Like, is it, that I have $200,000 out there, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really hard when you're looking at the basics of a P&L, you don't get that number, right? You see where your cost of goods are going every month, right? You see, well, here's the payroll and here's the rent and, here's the subcontractors, but you don't really get a sense of what does today look like. So that's what a WIP report does. The earned income statement for me is really controlling the payments. When are things coming in? I can control that as a business owner. When are things going out? I can control that, and that happens by having credit lines, right? Maximizing your credit lines, knowing when it's the best point to move a payment, whether it's 2 weeks down the road or whether, oh gosh, it's good for us to pay this now. So I think that piece is critical to understanding how to financially run a successful business. And Portical is kind of like over me to be like, okay, let's pull up those reports.
Yeah.
Gosh, Rebecca, like, what's going on here? Or things are looking great, let's do that showroom investment, right? Which is where I was. But then also just, I don't know, it's nice to have a coach. It's nice to have someone who's been in it longer than you, who's maybe, been through another tide or two longer than you've been in it. And I just was really seeking for more of that wisdom. And so that balance for me between Thrive and Portical has been, it's just, I feel like I've grown leaps and bounds in the last 3.5 years because of both of them.
Yeah, and I think that it's super important to, try to find a coach or a mentor to help us through any of these situations, and you've done that to me as well. And I know a lot of people don't have anybody, and I didn't have anybody to really look up to for a long time. And then I made a ton of mistakes that were very costly, that really were difficult on myself, my family, on my business. And there's a wealth of information in libraries, in your local town, on the internet, where you can actually, find all that information and talk to certain people and get with those groups. It's like being with EO too, or something like that. But those really help out, and they've really helped my business as well. And I know that they've helped you out tremendously as well. So getting out and finding one of those groups and hanging out with other like-minded people, getting rid of the bad apples or people that you don't want to talk to, has really helped me in my business as well. So with all of that said, I really appreciate you for being here.
You're
Is there
welcome.
anything else that you wanted to add, or anything else that you would have done differently, I guess, in your entrepreneurship career, or anything that you would like to put out there for our viewers?
I mean, it's so interesting. I was talking to a friend the other day, and they're like, what's the best sounded advice you've ever been given, was the question. And I was in high school, and my mom was working her way through getting a master's. So, she was a single mom, raised 2 girls. She would go on weekends down to University of Maryland to work on this master's degree, and we would stay with our aunts and uncles. And it was one of those trips or a drive back, and we were in the car, and she just kind of looked over and she said, you need to take every risk that comes your way, but take it with calculation. Because if you don't, you'll never know. You'll never know if you succeeded and man, you kicked it. You'll never know if you failed, but you turn around and you're like, gosh, at least I tried. And if I were to do it again, now I know I would do this. And so I think as an entrepreneur, I have zero regrets with any decision that I've made, any. Because I've either walked away having succeeded, or I've walked away going, dang, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah.
Right?
You learn from
right?
it.
Or I learned
Yeah.
from it and I'm like, you know what? Next time it comes around, I'm going to do it better. So I would just say, if you're thinking about being your own boss, which is the best, like I am my own boss, right? Be ready to learn your threshold for risk taking, because I don't think there's a single entrepreneur I know who hasn't been successful because they've taken that risk. They got out from under something, they had a vision, they had a passion, and they said, I'm going to try it. Why not?
Yeah.
The worst is I'm going to fall on my face, and then if you've got it in you, you get back up again and you do it again.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. I really appreciate you coming down here. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah.
And I wish you the most success in your business and your life and your future. And last question I have for you is, what is your favorite flavor of
you know.
Crispy? Yeah, right?
I love the cherry vanilla.
Yeah, our cherry press, which is over here.
But
So-
I do, I have a request, right?
What is your request?
The request is that the next flavor be orange creamsicle.
Oh, yes. The
Because that's
vanilla
my
and the
favorite
orange.
flavor.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm going to wait out till that one comes. But in the meantime, I'm the cherry vanilla girl.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being here.
You're
Rebecca.
welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So thank you so much for watching. We can learn a lot from Rebecca with everything that she's done throughout her entrepreneurship career. 27 years of doing design and build and working with architects and subcontractors and being a general contractor and putting all of those things together. She's found a niche that works for her, and she's adapted throughout, all the different things that have been thrown at her through the economy and things that are out of her control. And it's really a testament to everything that she's done and the awards that she's received throughout the years. All of her hard work is paying off, and it's really starting to show. And you can do that too through your journey. Just stick with it, keep moving forward, and remember to subscribe to this channel. It helps us out, it helps us grow, it helps us get bigger guests. Please help us out there. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to get crispy.
Here's to 5 o'clock somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Here's to a good tan and a buzz with the good ones that we love. Here's to 2 for 1 on ladies' night. Here's to the 19th hole. Anchors down and bottoms up. It's almost time to start the show.